Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Blatantly Honest. Today I spoke with a fellow Buffalo native, Miss Orlando for America, Izzy Skormin. She's also 22 years young, and she's an inspiration to women dealing with domestic abuse. She is a survivor herself and is using her platform, Life Outside of Him, to encourage men and women to get out of abusive relationships, to get the help that they deserve, and learn how to live for themselves. I'm so thrilled to have someone from my hometown of Buffalo on the show. More importantly, she's from Hamburg, which is even smaller, and someone that I know will relate to so many people out there. Welcome, Izzy. So, welcome to the Blatantly Honest show. I'm here with Izzy, who's representing Miss Orlando in the Miss Florida for America pageant. Yeah, I'm happy to have you on. How are
Happy to
you?
be here. I'm doing well. How are you?
As best as one can be, given can't see people. So, this is kind of nice seeing another person.
It really is. Oh my gosh. I feel like we've been in quarantine for like 100 years at this
Yeah,
point.
I do too. It's like, I don't even know. Today's something in April. It's like April 200 and something, but
Yeah.
who's
hmm
counting? So, well, thank you for being on today. I am so, honored to have met you and, be talking with you for the first time ever. I know we're going to be doing the pageant together. So that's exciting for me. This is my first
Yeah.
one. So, yeah, don't know what to expect, but it's going to be good.
It'll be awesome. Yeah. Honestly, like this is my first time doing Florida America, so I've never done that system before, but from what I've seen so far, I feel like we have a really great group of girls. The leadership is really awesome, so it'll be
Yeah.
exciting. Can't wait for July.
Yeah, me too. Oh my gosh, hopefully nothing else happens. Knock on
Uh,
wood.
I
And
know, seriously.
so you were just telling me you're from Buffalo and more
Yeah,
specifically Hamburg, where I
I
am from.
know.
Oh my goodness. Wow, what a small world. So, what is your favorite food from Buffalo?
Obviously, chicken wings. And it's actually kind of funny because I'm down in Fort Lauderdale right now with my boyfriend's family. I'm staying with them, and they've never had what and I'm sure you dub real chicken wings because what we find here in Florida, I'm sorry, is not real chicken wings. So I had to make them for them last night and totally changed their perspective on chicken wings.
Wow. You have to. People not from Buffalo like don't understand a
They
real chicken
don't.
wing. And like Duff's and Anchor Bar and Tim Hortons. I love
Oh,
peanut donuts from Tim
I
Hortons.
know. I worked there for 3 years, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I was
Wow.
like the Timbit sampler. Any new Timbits we got in, they'd be like, Izzy, come in the back. And I'd be like, I'm there.
Oh my goodness. Wow, that needs to be on your resume. Like I think
Seriously.
yeah, people don't even know what those are and it's just heartbreaking and they're used
All
to
they've
having
ever
Dunkin'.
known is Munchkins from
Yeah, that's not
something,
real.
which is sad. Yeah.
Mm, tragic, tragic. Well, the fact that you're just from Buffalo, like automatically makes you a really great person. So everyone just needs to know that from the get-go because everyone from Buffalo is like the nicest human being ever. So what made you get into pageantry?
Yeah, so I actually started when I was 10 years old. So it's been over a decade, which is scary.
Oh my
But
goodness.
how I got into it was that I actually was a dancer at Performing Arts Dance Studio. It's this little hole in the wall dance studio in Hamburg, New York. And I had been really, really shy. And my mom and my dance teachers were like, we got to figure out a way to get this girl out of her shell because I would come into dance class, I would go to the back corner and I'd sit there and I'd do the routine, but I like did not want to be seen, heard, looked at, nothing. And so my parents' bright idea was to basically force me into becoming a little bit more confident myself by throwing me on a stage and making me talk in front of a bunch of people. But
That'll do it.
yeah, it did it. But honestly, like that first pageant, I competed with National American Miss, the North New York pageant. I competed with them for 5 years, and I'll never ever forget that first open call that I went to. That was it for me. Like I went and I listened to these girls that were the current state queens, and they talked about the community service they did and just the experience of being a role model, and I was sold, and I have been involved ever since. I've competed with National American Miss, USA National Miss, Miss American Co-ed, some crazy local pageants. I was the Corn Festival Queen in
Wow.
2012. And it's been a great experience. I can honestly say for anybody who is thinking about competing in a pageant, has never done it, is curious, and wants to get involved, do it because it's not what you guys think it is. It's not toddlers and tiaras. We don't, pull each other's hair, hide each other's dresses in the back. I've truly like met the girls that will be my bridesmaids. And, it's funny because those are the girls that I met when I was 10 that I still talk to now at 22 years
Wow.
old and keep in touch with. And they're all over the country. Some are even outside of the country now doing incredible things. And just the caliber of people and women specifically that you meet in pageantry, it's the best of the best. It's the cream of the crop. They're women that are going out and making a change and being a catalyst in their communities. And it's been awesome. So I'm excited. And I'm so excited that an incredible woman like you that has done so much. I mean, I've been looking at your page. I know we haven't met in person yet, but you're exactly where you need to be. This is a great environment for you. And I'm so excited for you to have your experience with all of us in July.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I think it's going to be great. I was one of those people that when I first thought the word pageant, I was like, oh my God, no, like, being from Buffalo. And so my dad, I don't know if you're familiar with like all Buffalo, if you're not, it's okay. Whole lot of grass. So he is from Pembroke. And so, it's like out in the country. And so I grew up being, kind of like a country girl, like to play with the boys, like to climb trees, was never, ever, ever a girly girl. And
Mhm.
then I went through this lovely thing called puberty and I became a girly girl. And so so I was always like, oh, pageants, like I feel like that's one step in the girly level that I will never get to. And obviously that wasn't true because here I am doing it. So I was sketched out and at first I was like, I don't know what this is gonna be. And now I am just absolutely floored because everyone that I've spoken to has such a worldly experience and they are so grounded and beautiful and have stories. And, a lot of people, I think, look at beautiful women and they look at them and they're like, they haven't been through anything, they haven't dealt with something. And that just blows my mind. And that is where that line needs to be drawn because it's like, no, listen, like, I went through all this thing and now I'm here and I'm making a difference. And like you said, so let's talk about your story. What made, your platform what it is?
Yeah, so my platform is a little different than a lot of girls. It's not a specific organization that I work with. What it is it's called Life Outside of Him, and it's basically my survival story. So when I was 18 years old, I unfortunately found myself in a domestic violence situation. It was an extremely abusive relationship, and for a very long time, I actually didn't tell anybody. After the fact, after I'd gotten myself out of that situation, I was so scared and ashamed of what I had gone through and what I, in my mind, had put myself through for so long that I didn't know where to go from there. I mean, I guess to backtrack a little bit, I met him when I started college, which I began college at SUNY Brockport in New York. So I did my freshman year there. I met him, and it was like all relationships. We went through that honeymoon period where he was so romantic and so kind and so sweet. And I literally remember thinking to myself, thank God, like, thank you, God, for sending me this perfect man. Like, he could do no wrong in my eyes. And eventually, he decided that he wanted to transfer to the University of Central Florida. And, being a very naive, newly on my own, totally puppy dog in love young girl, I decided I was going to go with him. Had no family in Florida. My parents didn't like him and were like, if you choose to do this, you're on your own. So that's your decision. And I did it with all the
Wow.
common sense in the world, right? So I made the over 1,000-mile journey in my car, packed up all my stuff, and moved down here with him. And that was when things changed. And it literally was like a light switch. It went from this person that was my best friend and loved me so much and would tell me how beautiful I was every second and randomly drop by my work with bouquets of flowers and, all this like romance novel stuff to somebody who just hated me. And, I was just so confused by that. And for a long time, I really blamed myself in that relationship and just didn't understand what I was doing wrong. And so that period of time, it really affected me. My grades dropped. I was isolated from friends and family. Like he was everything. Trying to please him was everything. And um, unfortunately, the final straw happened on October 27th, and I'll never forget that day in my whole life because and I'm sorry, like this for some people can be hard to hear. So, if you have gone through something like this and you're not okay hearing like really traumatic things right now, this is forewarning because it sucks to hear sometimes. But um, at the age of 19, we had been living together and, it was a weird point in the relationship where things actually seemed to be getting better. But on that day, on October 27th, there was a Halloween party. We went to it. Um, I didn't know that he had been taking pills. I still to this day don't know what they were, but he was on something. I have no idea what it was. And when we left that night, for whatever reason, he just was in a rage because of whatever he was on, or, just anger at me for whatever reason. And he vividly, I remember it, told me, you're going to make me kill you, and tried to suffocate me with a pillow. And I just, at that point, remember thinking to myself, like, Isabel, like, your poor mother, your poor dad, like, they're going to have to, like, wake up tomorrow and hear the worst news of their life. And that was the point for me. When I made it out of that situation, I woke up the next day and I saw the bruises that I had and, had to put on shades and, hide everything that he'd done, and really like took the second to like evaluate like what was happening. That was when I realized like, all right, you need to get out of this situation. So
I'm so
that
sorry.
thank you. It was awful, and I don't I wouldn't go back and change it though, in a way. Like I think like, in some ways I am kind of thankful it happened when I was so young, so that now at 22 I've been through that horrible experience and had to like really rebuild myself to get to the point that I'm at now, so that now like I'm in a really happy healthy relationship. Like I know the signs to look for, and now luckily like being Miss Orlando and being in a position of advocacy and having the platform of the Florida for America pageant, I can go out there and teach people like, hey, this isn't okay. And, unfortunately, I think there's a lot in the media that makes a lot of abusive behavior seem normal.
Mhm.
And that shouldn't be the case at all. So we need more people making it apparent and making people aware of what is and isn't okay in a relationship, what's healthy, what's not, what are the red flags, what are the starting points of these abusive relationships. So, that's what I'm trying to do and hope to continue to do.
Wow. I can't imagine going through that, especially, dating someone and uprooting your whole life for this person.
Mm-hmm.
I can only imagine. I was sexually assaulted by my best friend when I was 14.
Oh
And,
gosh.
it's like you don't forget. And obviously a
Mm-hmm.
relationship and just, I wasn't even dating the guy and or anything, and that happened to me. But, you know, I can't imagine someone that you love trying to essentially end you.
Mm-hmm.
And what toll did that take on you?
It was awful, and the just the feeling of guilt that you feel for putting yourself through that, it's so heavy. And that's why my platform or my survival story or whatever is called Life Outside of Him, because it was that moment of being out of the relationship and then being like, okay, now what? How do I rebuild myself? because that's kind of what people don't talk about. There is a lot of talk about domestic violence, intimate partner violence, abuse in a relationship, and there's how to get help. But there's not a lot of talk about getting out of the relationship and then starting new because, a lot of being in an abusive relationship is that they isolate you from everything. They isolate you from your friends, your family. So everything is just with them because they don't want you to know how to live without them. That's what they want. And so, especially being in a state where I didn't have any friends or family here, I didn't even have a job at the time. It was a long period of just really like having to work on myself and remind myself that, before him, I had a life outside of him. I had these things that I love to do. I forced myself to enter a pageant in Florida because that was something that I could like have some roots in and meet some girls and get back to something that at a time made me so happy because I didn't compete during that time that I was with him. And, I forced myself to go to little coffee shops that were cute and read a good book or go to a park and just like learning to love yourself again and being around yourself again. So it was hard, but
I can only imagine. Now, have you heard anything more from this guy, or are you just like, "Oh, what happened to him?"
yeah, so after I got out of the situation, I made the decision to block him from everything. And it was actually like, this wasn't on purpose. It was just really good timing that I was actually moving apartments. So thankfully, he didn't know where to find me.
Good.
But I ended up moving apartments. I blocked him on everything. So that was kind of my way of coping with it, was just like, I couldn't see anything. I couldn't get calls from him, nothing. Um, it kind of sucks that he happens to work at a Chipotle down the street from me. I think he goes to a university near where I go to school. I don't want to say too
Hmm.
much about him, but yeah, so I do see him from time to time, and he always like will smile at me, and I'm always like, "How can you smile at me?" Which is weird, but
Yeah.
um, all I can hope is that from that experience and what he put me through is that maybe he's found some sort of peace within himself and grown as a person. That's all I can really hope for.
Yeah, that's difficult because I, not that I know how you feel, but in a sense, I know what you're saying.
Hmm.
Because like, the guy who attacked me, it's like you have all these thoughts and all these things that you wish would happen to them.
Yeah.
And then it's like, whoa, that's not who I am. That's not how I think. And you're right. You have to hope that they found that peace and, they can't take away your peace anymore. And obviously, you're doing so much to make sure that this doesn't happen to other women and men. And, it's incredible. So that's
Thank you.
empowering. So what would you tell a young Izzy, before you left Buffalo and came down to Florida? What would you tell her about just dating in general and looking out for those signs?
My biggest piece of advice for, a younger Izzy or any young woman that's getting herself into a relationship is really to just, when you are putting yourself into that position of being with another person, ask yourself, can you still love yourself the most in this relationship? Because being in a relationship, you have to love yourself enough to be
Mhm.
that strong partner. And if you love the relationship, more and you're willing to put yourself at risk to continue on, then that's not healthy. So it's a really easy way of kind of mentally checking yourself and seeing, if tomorrow I get my dream job and get asked to move to Paris, do I love myself enough to do what's right for me? And then if the relationship is meant to be, it'll work out. Or, if this person isn't treating me the way I want to be treated, do I love myself enough to take myself away? And if they take the steps to improve themselves and show that, hey, I'm really sorry, I didn't realize I was treating you like that, and, come back and try and work those things out, then great. But at the end of the day, it has to always be what's best for you. I think sometimes, especially in younger relationships, you have to be a little bit selfish because we're not fully matured as people and we don't have our lives fully planned out. So you can't fully put yourself in a position of depending on somebody else. So, that's
Yeah.
advice
That's
I wish
hard.
I
That's
had
hard
heard.
for, yeah, yeah. And for, a lot of people, especially like a lot of women and men, I feel, are so, I don't know, anxious to find love that, sometimes we look in the wrong corners, and sometimes we can't tell the difference between love and, control and all of that kind of stuff. So, with that being said, what kind of, how did you feel when you were going through this? Was it the next morning that you're like, oh my God, like, no, or was it days after? Because when you go through a trauma like that, not that I'm a doctor or anything, but for me personally, it was days, years for me after that I was like,
Mhm.
wow, that happened.
So I don't think I necessarily, the night that, the kind of, I guess I would say, climax of the abuse
Mhm.
happened, I didn't necessarily still realize at that point that, hey, maybe I'm in an abusive like situation. This could be domestic violence. That didn't really like come to mind. And I think that's because a lot of people associate domestic violence specifically with married couples.
Mhm.
When you're being taught about that in school, that's typically what they talk about. So I never really categorized myself as being a victim of domestic violence. But I will say that night that it happened, I was terrified. I didn't know, once he finally got off of me and I could breathe again and caught my breath and kind of realized what had happened, I knew like the second he fell asleep, like I got my keys and I left. And like I took any stuff that had been in the apartment with me that night. Like I never saw him again from that night because I don't know if it was a survival instinct or whatever it was, but I just knew like I don't know why this was like the number one thing in my mind, but I just remember I kept thinking like I can't do this to my mom. Like I can't let this happen. Like I can't let something happen to myself because like my mom will never get over it. Like, that was like my number one like thing that made me like act and get out and like use that adrenaline. But it took me a long time to realize like the extent of how it was and how long it had actually been going on before I ever really even realized it.
How? Oh, I can't imagine. And seeing that person eventually, when you saw him, did all the thoughts come flooding back, or were you at peace because you got yourself out of that? How did you feel?
It's definitely hard when I do see him. I definitely avoid that Chipotle.
Mhm.
But, when I did see him that first time since things happened, there was some of the feelings like just the feelings of anger and, sadness a little bit. But at the same time, I have really made peace with what happened after a really long time of not telling my friends and family about it. I finally was able to come to them and talk to them about what happened. And that gave me a lot of strength in knowing that they supported me through what I had gone through and, believed me because that's always a big fear as well. Um, so yeah, seeing him, it sucks. It does bring up old emotions, but like I will forever have that strength of being a survivor and getting through that, and he'll never be able to take that away from me. So
Amen.
yeah, that's what I keep with me.
Wow. How was it telling your friends and telling your mom?
Oh my gosh. It was awful. I think the worst was telling my brother,
Ugh.
just because growing up, it was my mom's a single parent. So it was me, my mom, and my brother. And my little brother, he kind of took on, man of the house when we were
Mhm.
growing up. And so my brother had no clue. And telling him was awful because you could see it just like broke their heart because those people,
Chills.
they
Yeah.
love you, so they don't want to hear stuff about you being hurt by someone that they trusted to protect you.
Mhm.
So It was really hard, but they were so supportive. My biggest fear was that they weren't going to believe me or that they would think that I was like overreacting or something, which was silly of me to think in the first place. But, um, it was definitely a huge weight off my shoulders when I did finally tell them.
Wow. Yeah, that would be a very, very hard conversation to have in any form. Uh,
Oh,
wow.
yeah.
So with that being said, how was it when met the guy you're with now? Was it just like night and day? Did you guys have to have those conversations? Like, when did you start dating again?
Yeah, so I definitely took like a year of not dating anybody.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I needed some time to date myself and just really learn to like recover, love myself. I had won a title with the Miss America organization, which was really fun. So at the time, I was really like involved with that and, everything that comes with being in college as well. So I really just took some time for me, but I met Dominic, who's my boyfriend now. And it was kind of funny because I met him, you always meet the right people when you're not looking for them at
Yeah, at the
all.
wrong time.
Yeah, I was totally not. And the story is kind of funny because I technically was sort of on a date with another guy. And he was just not like, I don't know, that guy was like not paying attention to me or something, whatever. But I ended up meeting my boyfriend at the time and didn't like him. I thought like, I was like not into it. I was like, eh. And then he like found me again several months later. And I was still like, that's weird that you like sought me out. So I still like was not here for it. And then December of last year, I finally agreed to go on a date with him. And it really was night and day. He is like the most caring, selfless person in the entire world. He's so supportive. Like, he's the best pageant boyfriend ever. He literally like he comes and he's like, I think she's gonna win. Like when we'll go watch pageants, and he always
Aw.
ends up being right, and I don't. Um, but yeah, he's amazing. But it definitely, like, when you go through something like that, and I'm sure, like, with your experience as well, when you do start dating, there is always kind of that fear of, like, when am I going to tell them about this experience? Because it becomes a big part of you.
Yeah.
And, not everybody understands that. So it was scary when I finally did have that conversation with him, just because you don't know how people are going to react, if it's going to make them uncomfortable, if they're going to believe you. And, luckily he was so understanding and just so kind and caring about it and really just wanted to like understand my feelings. And I think talking about that honestly like brought us closer as a couple.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah, it's really great. He has taught me a lot about love and, what it's like to really be in a healthy, happy relationship.
What it
So,
should be, what it should
yeah.
be. And you brought up a few times, I don't know if just out of habit or whatnot, but believing you. Was there an instance in which someone didn't believe you?
So there wasn't in my case, but it's actually a fact that 50% of women that have gone through abuse or inevitably, unfortunately, are killed by their abuser, they will have sought out help and they're never given that help. It's not offered to them, mainly because, for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, why it still happens today in the 21st century, but um, people think that when women have gone through distress of any kind that they're just being emotional or overreacting, and that it's not true. And I can tell like you've probably experienced this
Oh
with
yeah,
some
that
things. Yeah.
that's exactly why I asked you because I'm like, tell me, sister, because people,
Yeah,
people didn't believe me at first, and it, it's horrible
it
because
is.
people ask for help and they say this is what happened, and oh, you're lying, oh, that didn't happen, or they believe sometimes the abuser who's like, oh my God, me never, and horrible things happen and people lose their lives because of it,
Yep.
and that's just heartbreaking, heartbreaking. But now you have turned everything into a positive, and you found love again, and you're completing college, which is amazing, and You're taking all the right steps. So
Yeah, absolutely. And, really the reason that I decided to become an advocate for domestic violence awareness was because I finally got to the point where I felt ready to share my story, and I really started to see, not even like specifically as Miss Orlando, but even just as Izzy, like we as human beings, our voices are a lot louder than they seem. And so even if one person speaks their story and talks about what's happened to them and, how they've overcome that, there could be one person in an entire crowd of people that was listening, and that could change their entire life. And that's going to be an endless domino effect. And that's really why I do what I do. And, I'm excited to keep doing it, grow it, see how many people that I can help.
that's incredible. Well, I know you're going to make a giant impact on this world and,
Thank you.
hopefully save a lot of people because your story is powerful. So,
Thanks.
well, thank you for sharing it with me. I know it was just a
Yeah.
glimpse, and I really look forward to getting to know you more and,
Yeah.
just, I don't know, I'm excited. So,
Me
especially that you're
too.
from Buffalo and,
Yeah.
you've been through, yeah, go Bills!
I
And
know.
you've just been through so much. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for that because it takes a lot.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, thank you for sharing and opening up to me. I know it's difficult. Miss Orlando, take us out of this episode. So, Izzy, go ahead.
All right, be bold, be you, and be blatantly honest.